order this committee of the whole for March 14th. And in honor of the Biwa Pool, the Village of Pemberton acknowledges that we are meeting here today within the unceded territory of the Biwa Nation. For those members of the public in attendance, please note that this meeting is a live webinar and is being recorded. A recording of the meeting will be available on the village's website following the meeting. Any changes to the agenda? None. Motion approved. Councillor Helmer, second by Councillor Craddock. Any opposed? Motion carries. Adoption of minutes from the committee of the whole 239 from February 28th. Councillor Helmer, second by Councillor Ramsden. Any opposed? Carries. So we'll go right to item number 4, and I believe we're bringing in Mr. Cameron or more folks. And we're looking at the Nkukma sub-area plan introduction. Chalmers will be presenting.
Good afternoon to the committee of the whole. Very grateful to be here with you this afternoon. Apologies for not being there in person, but I'm, as you might be able to tell, quite under the weather. So I figured I'd save you all from this. If it's okay with the mayor, I would like to share my screen and walk you through a very brief presentation. The purpose of today is really, it's a bit of a milestone in a process, and it's important to bear in mind that it is in fact a process of processing the application on the Nkukma lands, which formerly was known as the Benchlands area. What we're hoping to achieve today is simply an introduction of the first draft of a sub-area plan to committee of the whole. This will initiate a subsequent round of public consultation and at least one, probably more committees of the whole to work through the plan. So today's not about getting into the details. I realize you have a substantial body of information in front of you that you received just a matter of days ago. What we would like to do is provide you with the plan today, advance through some of the public work, and then likely in late April or early May, reconvene for a workshop with committee of the whole where we can start diving into some of the details of the proposed sub-area plan. So just again, in terms of background, this council did receive an update in January, but since March of 2021, the village has been in receipt of and has been processing a substantial official community plan amendment and rezoning from Skankinkum Development Limited Partnership. This would amend the OCP from its current residential neighborhoods use to a more detailed residential land use. That's what's outlined in the plan. The Benchlands Neighborhood Concept Plan resulted in the rezoning and OCP designation of these lands for a single detached neighborhood effectively. There's been a substantial body of work undertaken by the applicant and a significant amount of review done by staff to look at how that land use solution may be reconsidered. And what you see before you is a reconsideration of a former approval in the Benchlands Neighborhood Concept Plan in 2007. So the tool itself, when the application came in or even before, we looked at what would be the best way to communicate the proposal, not just to the community and council for the approvals process, but to ensure that over the long-term development of these lands, that there was a stable foundation upon which the project would move forward. The development of these lands comes with a host of considerations. There's a series of evolving council policies and priorities that this plan is a better tool for capturing than simply just going through a text amendment to the OCP and a tune-up to the rezoning. So a substantial amount of thought went into how to best navigate what lays ahead, and the sub-area plan tool was deemed to be the best. It is a tool that is used commonly. I've used it a number of times myself in other jurisdictions to effectively bridge the higher level official community plan policies with the particulars of an individual site and the zoning aspirations on that site. So what sits before you would be anticipated as a schedule to the official community plan, be it this one or a future one. It would run with the plan, and what it would really do is take some of these larger concepts and test them on the ground on a specific site. So as the committee of the whole is aware, the total holdings is quite substantial. Only the portion that you see in red is being considered at this point. The rezoning application is for 77 acres. The sub-area plan will address all the future developable lands within the village of Pemberton. And as you'll see when you dive into the plan, there's some encumbrances and limitations on the short-term development of many portions. In terms of process to date, the proponents initially started making acquisition requests and detailed studies of the land in 2019. That led to an application in 2021. There have been 2 rounds of public consultation held to date. Those are the larger formal consultations. I can say it's probably been a fairly iterative and consultative process, with the applicants reaching out to interest groups in the community and working through the plan. There's been an internal and external referral. Council did authorize a Section 475 report that's to solicit early and ongoing consultation from review agencies and other authorities. That has been completed for round 1. One of the pieces that's still in works. So really where we're at now is we've collected what we believe to be most of the information required to have an informed conversation about the OCP and zoning at an OCP level. There's still significant information that's coming forward on servicing and more of the how the lands could be developed, and that information is anticipated shortly. That's a lot more pertinent to the zoning stage, amenities and contributions and so on. So we feel very comfortable advancing the OCP level discussion at this point and letting some of that other information catch up. So the sub-area plan represents a synthesis of all of this information that we've gathered over the last few years, and then a projection of what that may look like in terms of policies and guidelines. Just very quickly, as a schedule to the OCP, this is different than an OCP itself in that it really is able to dig down into the details of a particular site. So when you go through the plan, what you'll see is a very detailed analysis of the site. And in this case, particularly some of the hillside limitations, some of the considerations that go into the development of the hillside. And so the plan, using hillside as an example, will inventory what's actually on the land and then apply council guidance, OCP policy, and other best practices to see how that would be resolved. And usually what this means is we've established a series of not just the inputs about the land inventory, but planning principles based on a whole myriad of sources, including the OCP and council direction policy that may not have yet made its way into the OCP, but has been adopted by council. That policy then gets applied at a very site-specific level, and the policies will guide long-term considerations of any changes or the ideas that go into the future zoning. One of the more important deliverables out of this plan is the series of development permit area guidelines you see at the end. The development permit area guidelines really fall into 2 categories. Council's quite familiar with dealing with a lot of the form and character guidelines for how buildings look, but there's a series of fairly robust land-based development permit area guidelines addressing things like hillside development, wildfire hazard, geological constraints, and those things. So there'll be what the importance of the guidelines is that over the long term, as this project builds out, there would be a series of development permits that would be required, both for the alteration of land and for the construction of any multifamily buildings. So again, the intent today is to effectively have council or the committee of the whole receive the draft sub-area plan. We have a tentative open house scheduled towards the end of April. That open house would mark a 3rd open house held by the proponent to solicit feedback on the proposal, and it would give the village an opportunity to introduce the plan. So the intent is that it would be effectively a shared open house, albeit it would be funded by the proponents. We're looking at refining a committee of the whole date towards the end of April or May, where we would look at a workshop. So that would be kind of a short sleeve session where we'd be able to go through and get into some of the details of what's contained in this first draft of the plan, solicit any committee of the whole feedback for matters that they'd like to see included or refined or changed in the draft plan, as well as the future path forward. So depending on the next round of community consultation and some detailed committee of the whole review, that will really determine what the next steps in the process will be. We do anticipate that this review process will continue for the foreseeable future, although it is moving. These things are larger and complicated, and we know that it needs to be done in the time that it takes. So the approach really for the next steps is a little more jazz than classical. We're not scripting out every step along the way. We're letting the process respond to the matters that may come up through the review. So with that, Mr. Mayor, there is a recommendation in the staff report to effectively receive the draft sub-area plan and look forward to the next steps. And with that, I'd be open to any questions you may have.
Chalmers, any questions?
Thanks, Mr. Chalmers, for the report. Hope you're feeling better tomorrow. Just wondering on page 40 of the report under F, and you said we're not going to get into the details. It does talk about affordable housing under F, and I see that any of that secured through a housing group will not be included in the calculation of the maximum density. So I guess the question would be, what amount of density will we allow under a housing agreement? Should that be in there, or will that come up in the future conversations?
Mr. Mayor, through you, that's exactly the sort of comment we'd hope to have in a longer workshop session. Some of the specific policy statements, one of the things that will be challenging is a lot of the issues that seem light in the sub-area plan are really because they're matters of zoning. So we'll use the workshop to explain the interplay between those and how the policy may inform or may not do an adequate job informing certain zoning moves. It will be some time when council ultimately gets to a point where they're considering approval of the OCP amending bylaw, you will do so with all of the zoning information in one comprehensive package. So I'd rather not delve into individual policy statements today, if you don't mind. So I will dodge a direct answer to that question, but I'll certainly part of it for inclusion in our workshop.
Thanks very much. I won't ask the other two questions, and I'll wait until the next workshop.
Any questions?
Thanks, Mr. Chalmers. I'm sorry you're ill. You did a great job though working with that. I just wanted to check on the sequencing, and I think I heard you say it, but I just wanted to confirm that the community consultation is happening before the next committee of the whole, so we have that as input to the next committee of the whole.
Mr. Mayor, through you, yeah, we're looking at running almost a parallel process. The way it stands now, it looks like the public open house would be before the next committee of the whole. We may not have all of the formal reporting, but certainly council will be made aware of the committee of the open house date and could choose to attend as individuals if you liked. And we will be able to provide a bit of a gut feel about what was said. We're still working through some of the details on the open house. It does look like end of April is probable, and the likely an early May committee of the whole. So we'll know what the community has said. And there has been, at the last report, I did not include it today, but at the workshop, we will go through the consultation that's been undertaken to date. We are in receipt of a consultation report, which was attached to our January reporting, but we'll bring all of that together for you at the workshop.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if there's an ability to influence that timeline, I would really appreciate having that input there for our working group. So we do have all of the information. We also have the community input to consider.
Yes. Mr. Chalmers, so through that workshopping, we'll get into details around what diversity housing actually looks like, what the composition of housing looks like, active transportation, all those fun details. I'm curious in terms of how the plan is being set up, though. The development is going to happen in stages or phases. You know, we've seen a difference, obviously, in priorities and pressures since when the neighborhood community plan was put together previously and now. So I'm just wondering, will it be built into the, and maybe this is one of those details for next time too, will it be built into the plan that it gets sort of refreshed against local current pressures as development phases go on? In other words, we're going to set a plan here. We're going through the whole process that you explained. We'll engage the community. We'll put it all together in X amount of years when phase 2 or phase 3 is being contemplated. Is there some sort of mechanism to make sure that the details within the plan are still as relevant in that day?
Mayor Richmond, through you, certainly that can be built into the plan. live experience with these, having done several of them, is that over time things do change. I did Quest University, did the Oceanfront in Squamish, did Waterfront Landing in Squamish, and all of those have gone through everywhere from tweaks to rethinks. What this does do, though, is it makes sure that that happens at an OCP level conversation. So whether this becomes part of an annual review of an OCP or a tune-up in conjunction with the owner, one of the differences between a plan like this and a general OCP is because it applies specifically to a site and is being prepared in response to a development application. It's not usually open to that sort of same freewheel changing of ideas and other things. Enhancements, absolutely. What we will also see is that there's different layers in this when we consider the zoning and ultimately the development agreement, which we won't really start seeing until the zoning work is well underway. Is between those three layers, there's going to have to be a good balance between being predictable, being definitive. So things like maximum number of units, other targets need to be stated very clearly, but there also has to be some flexibility to respond to other situations. Maybe not a bad case in point would be the 2007 neighborhood concept plan. When it was adopted into the OCP, there's road allowances on your OCP schedules, road alignments. Now, whether those are binding or not is debatable, but still, we want to make sure that the project can respond within certain parameters that council is comfortable with to do different things so that it doesn't have to, these plans aren't intended to be encumbrances to development. They're intended to make sure that what development happens within parameters defined by council. And I think what we'll spend a fair bit of time discussing at future meetings is the true importance of the development permit area guidelines. Again, that's not a tool that has been utilized as it could be in other parts of the municipality. And I think this plan brings it a step or two closer to realizing some of the potential benefit.
Great, thank you, that's helpful. Any questions? Go ahead.
Good, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Chalmers. I'm not quite sure if my question is relevant, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Village of Pemberton has provided great opportunity for consultation, and because this is in some ways a historic partnership, and I'm wondering if members of the Lil'wat community will be provided the same opportunity for an open house consultation in their community as opposed to having to come to the village to be participants in that process.
Mr. Mayor, through you, I think it's a very, very relevant question in that the history and ownership of this application and these lands provides some incredibly important opportunities to do things a little bit differently when it comes to relationship with the Lil'wat Nation. Where it stands now is the applicants are taking the lead on the consultation in the village, as well as at Lil'wat Nation. And so I know that there's been several attempts to have broader conversations, and there's been some recent discussions at political and community levels that are very, very important. I don't want to get into some of the finite details of the ownership today necessarily, but the project partnership is a private developer and a subsidiary corporation of Lil'wat Nation. And so what also will need to happen clearly is that business group will have some accountability and responsibility, quite certainly, to the Lil'wat Nation itself. And of course, Lil'wat Nation is always more than invited to attend Village of Pemberton consultation sessions. So I know a new and fruitful relationship is growing through the OCP review process, and we're still looking at ways that can all be tied together. But we would anticipate certainly this is consultative, absolutely, with Lil'wat Nation.
Any questions? Seeing none, can I get a motion to receive, please? Councilor Craddock, seconded by Councilor Ramsden. Opposed?
Sorry, Cameron, do you want that recommendation that staff put forward?
Receive.
That was to receive, but also to authorize staff to
Oh, yeah.
facilitate.
Sorry. Motion as presented, Councilor Craddock.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Chalmers. Hope you're better. Looking forward to the workshop in the spring. Okay. That's it for community of the whole. Thanks for coming by. See you guys. That's it for community of the whole. So I look for a motion to adjourn community of the whole. Councilor Craddock, seconded by Councilor Helmer, and opposed. Carries. Take a couple moments. Thanks for dropping by, guys.